Finally, the state of Oklahoma may be the first in the union to officially recognize the personhood of the unborn. I'm Matt Barber, Vice President of Liberty Counsel Action, on the phone today with Steve Crampton, who is Vice President and General Counsel with Liberty Counsel. Steve, this is tremendous news coming out of the state of Oklahoma. You have been at the forefront and leading Liberty Counsel's efforts on personhood, in the personhood movement, and Oklahoma is poised to sign the first legislative effort for personhood. The governor has said that he will sign the law once it's passed, and the unborn will be protected in the state of Oklahoma. Their personhood will be recognized. Tell us about this.
Matt, it really is an amazing development, and as you say, this is a person. They in fact officially title it the Personhood Act, and the state Senate had acted already once, and then the House came in and modified some of the language. The House will pass this bill, and it'll go right back to the Senate, which has promised that it will act immediately and approve the revised language. And as you say, the governor herself has also said she is staunchly pro-life, will sign this bill into law. And so what we have, as you say, is the first kind of unadulterated Personhood Act out of a state legislature. We've had other states that legislatively have enacted things that recognize rights for the unborn in limited circumstances. For instance, in a fetal homicide kind of context, where they carefully say, oh, this doesn't have anything to do with abortion. But here in Oklahoma, for the first time, they have removed the kind of we bow the knee to Roe v. Wade language and are putting this forward as just a pure personhood act. And at the same time, in Oklahoma, you have a citizen initiative that proposes a personhood amendment to their state constitution. We are in court right now on that case. Thankfully, we have been asked to represent the Personhood Oklahoma folks.
And by we, you mean Liberty Counsel, right?
That's right, Liberty Counsel. And as one might predict, the ACLU and the Center for Reproductive Rights and all the usual suspects from the left have already filed the challenge and brought us into the state Supreme Court, claiming that it is unconstitutional and then violates certain technical requirements and so forth as well. So, well, they did
the same thing in Mississippi, although the personhood amendment through a series of events did not pass, unfortunately, in Mississippi. The legal challenge of which Liberty Counsel defended, we did prevail, correct?
That is correct. And in fact, not only in Mississippi, but we recently won a victory in the Ohio State Supreme Court, where the same suspects brought virtually the same challenges, and the Ohio Supreme Court said, no way. So in Ohio, as we speak, citizens are gathering signatures on their personhood amendment. So this is really an exciting grassroots effort, but I think ground zero right now is the state of Oklahoma. Wow.
Big news. Now, you mentioned something earlier. You mentioned fetal homicide and how the pro-aborts, this is the sacred cow. Abortion is the sacred cow of the left. We talked about this, Sean Akers and I, last week on Faith and Freedom. They will even oppose a fetal homicide bill where if a baby is killed when a mother is assaulted or murdered and the unborn child dies, there are bills across states around the country and even federal protection for the unborn child if they are the victim of a homicide due to some other violent crime, right, some act, and they will even oppose that. Yet the incongruity inherent within those fetal homicide bills, the language always bothered me. Because here in one instance, if somebody kills the baby inside the mother's womb, they're charged with homicide. But if the mom, for any reason, without any reason really, goes in and has that child killed in an abortion mill, then there is no homicide. How do you reconcile that?
Matt, you're so right. There is no way, logically, to reconcile those, we are left with this horrific situation where even the courts more or less apologize and say, well, we understand that according to the U.S. Supreme Court, if the mother chooses, as you say, to kill her own child, then the child has no rights, is not a person in the law. But if the mother seeks to preserve the life of the child and a third party kills the very same child, perhaps even under the same circumstances, certainly at the same gestational age, then magically the child does have legal rights. I mean, it is preposterous and logically contradictory on its face, isn't it?
Well, that is personhood. That's the personhood movement. For the under the current laws, that's the amazing thing about a lie. Eventually, that lie catches up with you, and when logic and reason and science and reality come into play, the lie falls to pieces. So it's at this point in law under Roe v. Wade, it's a subjective analysis. The personhood, the inherent value of the child and that person's personhood and the liberties that come with personhood are completely subjective and dependent upon the opinion or the whim of the woman who happens to be carrying that child in her womb. She decides whether that's a life worth living. She decides if that child has personhood. Forget science, forget reality, forget everything else.
Right.
This is the pro-choice mantra, isn't it?
And Matt, that's exactly right. And it's interesting that you put it that way, because in the not so distant past, the pro-choicers would tell women, well, it's not a living human being. It's just, as they say, a blob of tissue. They can no longer hide behind that lie any longer. Now they're forced to acknowledge, well, yes, it's a living human being, but so what? It still isn't entitled to any legal rights. It is, as you say, a subjective test. If the mother wants to destroy her child, then she has a legal right, a fundamental constitutional right, is what they say, to do so. That is ludicrous, of course, again, on the face of it. And little by little, we are coming to the point where the courts are going to have to recognize they, too, have bought a lie, and they cannot maintain the lie. As you say, eventually the truth will out. And we're very near that day, I think. One day very soon. It will start with the state Supreme Courts, perhaps the Oklahoma Supreme Court here in this particular challenge. But very soon, I think the U.S. Supreme Court is going to have to come to grips with it or lose all claim, all pretense of any real moral authority in our nation.
Well, if all the different incrementalist approaches that we have taken in making the advances that we have for life over the years, if they're a chisel, and we've been chiseling away at this manufactured block that is this phantom constitutional right for a woman to have her baby dismembered within her womb, then isn't the personhood movement, isn't this the sledgehammer that really cracks that block in half?
I think it really is. And the other thing about that incrementalism, let me say this. We have been quite favorably inclined and happy to work with those that propose those incremental chipping away pieces, as you say.
Yeah.
But the problem with buying wholly into incrementalism is sort of like mathematically. You've probably heard the problem. If you start a foot away from the wall and you say you'll go halfway toward the wall over and over again, well, at the end of the day, you never reach the wall because you can always divide it infinitesimally once again and never quite reach there. So here with incrementalism in the law, at some point you've got to pick up the stone that is aimed at the giant's forehead directly and unapologetically. And that's where we are with personhood. You've got to take them on head on, as it were, or it will never fall.
Well, folks, at Liberty Counsel, we are on the front lines. Folks like Steve Crampton, one of the nation's foremost pro-liberty, pro-family, pro-life attorneys with Liberty Counsel, are on the front lines, at the forefront, standing in the gap in defense of the unborn child, of innocent human life, standing for the principles of our Declaration of Independence, standing for biblical principles that recognize the inherent worth of every human life from the moment of conception to natural death. To learn how you can become part of this ministry and join with us as we stand in the gap for life, go to lc.org or give us a call, 1-800-671-1776.